With Game Week 12 coming to a close, FPL Game Week 13 is here. And whether you're on a free hit or just using transfers, we're going to help you out with all of the tips in this week's Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. This video is split into two parts, the first of which we'll be having a look at those players you may already have in your team and which ones you should keep and which ones you should sell. Then we'll be looking at the players you might not have, which players you should buy, and which players you should avoid. Players will be tier listed with the best players at the top and the worst ones at the bottom. Hello and welcome to FPL Mate. My name is Dan and welcome to another episode of the Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid videos. And today we're going to be starting off with some forwards that you may already have in your team. So let's take a look through some of these players and the keeps first of all. Mateta, Voltemada and Welbeck are going to go in this section. I know some people disappointed with Mateta and his early sub 1-pointer in Game Week 12, but we did know he was carrying a very small injury from the international break, so it wasn't entirely surprising to see him get an early sub in that match. He did have a chance to score in that game. Some people saying that maybe Mateta isn't quite clinical enough. I do agree that he is not the most clinical of strikers, but you have to remember that chance that he had in that game, it wasn't a complete sitter. It was like a 0.2, 0.3 XG chance, so you can't expect him to be scoring those every single time. Actually, he's only slightly underperforming his XG, 4.61 XG in his last 6 games and 4 goals scored. It's not actually too bad. And actually against Manchester United at home as well, I think this fixture really suits him because Man United concede a lot of chances in those central areas close to goal. So basically the striker's position, and Mateta might be able to take advantage of that. So I definitely would not be put off by the recent blank from Mateta when we're looking for future FPL points. Looking at Voltemada, he had another good game against Man City. Unlucky not to score in that. And actually, looking at some of these fixtures, I think some of these games, there could be goals. Now, of course, Newcastle, not necessarily the greatest team away from home against Everton, but you do think, okay, maybe in some future game weeks, we're going to have some better chances here. Spurs at home is a lovely fixture right now, as is Burnley at home in Game Week 15. So I wouldn't be looking to sell Voltemada quite yet. Welbeck coming off the back of another goal in Game Week 12. He faces Nottingham Forest away next, which I think is turning into a slightly tougher game. But that combined with Aston Villa at home and West Ham at home, I think the next 3 do look pretty decent for Welbeck as long as he can continue to get minutes. Remember, guys, and this is big, Game Week 14 is going to be a midweek game week. So Game Week 13 will be played at the weekend, Game Week 14 the midweek, and Game Week 15 the following weekend after Game Week 13. So there's going to be some fixture congestion in the next 3 game weeks, and players like Welbeck are going to be the type of player who we may be a little bit worried about. But whilst I wouldn't necessarily buy him, and we'll come to that, I don't think I would sell him. Not yet, not now, not with the form that he is providing. Going into the monitor section, if you have Ekitike, I think I would keep him for this game week. If you still, for some reason, have him in your squad, I do think there's a good chance Isak gets dropped in Game Week 12, in Game Week 13 after a poor Game Week 12 performance, and as such, West Ham is going to be a really nice fixture. Now, we will speak about this again when we look at some other Liverpool players, but West Ham have been really bad defensively. They haven't improved at all. You might remember in Game Week 11, they conceded 2 goals to Burnley, the worst attack in the league in terms of, those chances they create. Burnley don't create many chances, but still managed to score twice against West Ham. And then last week, yes, they only conceded 2 goals to Bournemouth in Game Week 12, but they conceded 4 XG in that game. That absolutely got battered. Bournemouth took 26 shots in that game, which is enormous. And I think Liverpool, if they play the same way as they played kind of in the first 30 minutes of the way they played it against Nottingham Forest, they get a goal in that first 30 minutes and don't let their head drop and don't lose their heads, then actually I think Liverpool have a really good chance of putting up a big scoreline against West Ham. I think they are a little bit of sleeping giants of FPL at the moment, and Ekitike, if he plays, could be involved in that. That said, I do think Liverpool are still a little bit susceptible to conceding at the moment and can lose their heads. And therefore, Bowen might be worth keeping if you do have him in your team, even though on paper this looks like a rough fixture. It might not be horrendous, particularly at home. Isidore is here as well. Maybe one to monitor, only because Bournemouth have been so bad defensively would I consider keeping Isidore, because really he has been pretty poor. Krupi Jr., one to monitor, maybe consider selling soon. If Semenyo is back, and we will come to him, then Krupi Jr. is probably going to drop back onto the bench. And as for yourselves, I think unless you're on a free hit or you can bench Joao Pedro this week, I would sell him. I don't think I'd want to play him in Game Week 13, so it's going to be team dependent, but I think for a lot of people, moving Joao Pedro to a new forward might actually be a really nice idea. We've got Gyökeres in the sell category as well, even when he is back. Marino's been playing so well. Havertz is going to be back in the next week or two. There is going to be some rotation risk for Gyökeres even when he is available, and Benjamin Šeško, he is going to be out for several weeks, so he is going to be just a very easy sell for us. Moving on to midfielders, and yeah, we mentioned Liverpool players, and I think when I watched the Liverpool versus Forest game, and I mentioned in the first 30 minutes, I thought Liverpool were really good, actually. It was Salah and Gakpo that seemed to be the most threatening players in that attack. And I think if the chances had fallen to some slightly more clinical players, then actually we might have seen an early goal from Liverpool against Forest, and it could have been an entirely different game. Let's not talk about the first Forest goal. That's a different conversation. But I know if you're a Liverpool fan, this is going to be like, oh, I'm sick of Liverpool players. If you don't watch the games as well, you might be like, Liverpool lost 3-0. Like, surely their players are awful. Kind of, no, not really. Yeah, certainly if you watch the first 30 minutes. So I think what is really interesting with these Liverpool attackers, Salah and Gakpo, are their underlying numbers are genuinely incredible. And actually, our three keeps today, Salah, Gakpo, and Saka, who are all, these are players who kind of maybe have a bad rep in the FPL world right now. They're not very fashionable picks right now. I think people are sick of them. And yeah, I think certainly if you just look at the points, maybe if you don't watch the games, if you don't look at the stats, you don't look at the numbers, you're going to think these players are pretty poor picks right now. But actually, these are the three top midfielders for underlying data right now in the entire Premier League over the past 6 game weeks, which is the sample size we use in these videos. Salah, Gakpo, Saka, these are the three best. They have the highest amount of expected goal involvements. They're taking the most shots. They're creating the most chances. When you compare these guys to other players who are much trendier, whether that's, I don't know, Neto or Mbermo or Minter or whoever, these guys knock those guys out the park when it comes to shots taken, key passes made, etc., etc. With Saka as well, we've got defensive contributions as well. So when we're looking at players who are getting loads of chances to score, they are heavily involved in what their team are doing, and they have favourable fixtures, particularly in Liverpool's case, you do have to think, okay, this is going to be an opportunity. Whether that opportunity actually comes true, we'll have to wait and see. But in FPL, it's a prediction game, right? And whilst we can run agendas on who we think is good, you can run the storylines who you think is good or bad. At the end of the day, we need players who are taking shots and making passes. And those are typically the players who will get FPL points when we're trying to predict the future, because that's what the game is. And Salah, Gakpo, and Saka, even though they might not be fashionable right now, that is what they're doing. They are shooting a lot. They are creating a lot. They have got high XG chances. They have got good fixtures coming up. And what more can you really do when you're picking FPL players? Yes, you can just look at points and pick players based on who scored the most points, but often over the long term, that doesn't really work, and you are depending more on luck. But yeah, hey, maybe this game is just a game of luck after all. But there you go, guys. There's some arguments to keep Salah, Gakpo, and Saka. I do think they are well worth keeping. I don't think they've really put much of a foot wrong in terms of what they're doing on the pitch, and their data is supportive of that. So I'd be willing to keep them. It's not like they're not getting chances, unlike some of the other players we will be speaking about. So, for example, Ismail Assar, good fixtures, but his underlying numbers have actually dropped quite significantly. Just 1 XG in the past 6 game weeks, only taken 10 shots. So kind of one or two shots per game. It's not quite the same as it was, unfortunately. He's still probably worth keeping because of the good fixtures, but things have settled down a little bit for him. It has to be said. Semenyo, obviously last game week he was unavailable. It was presumed he was unavailable because of his ankle injury. It turns out it was actually because he was ill. His ankle was fine, but he had some illness, and that's why he didn't play in game week 12. So game week 13, we are expecting him to be back. That said, his numbers have also been dropping off recently, so I can understand why you would want to sell him, which is why he's in the monitor category, but definitely not a must sell or anything like that. Caicedo, dropping down a little bit for defensive contributions, although I think that's mostly because of his minutes have been reduced, to be honest. Arsenal at home, he is going to get defensive contributions in this game. He's going to get 4 points, pretty much minimum. He will start in that game as well. I think the only reason he didn't start in game week 12 is because he played two 90-minute games on international duty over in North America. So a lot of game time very far away. And obviously, Chelsea do have other options in a favourable fixture. They just opted to rest some players there, and therefore Caicedo will be back for this Arsenal game. Grealish is very close to monitor. I am recording this before the Everton-Manchester United game, so yeah, apologies for that. But I think Grealish in general hasn't really been performing recently the way we would want him to, particularly for that price tag. Onto some sells. Kudus, barely shooting, barely creating. Really, really big drop off there for him. Anthony, similar situation. Form has gone long ago. I don't know why he's still in people's teams. Reinders, similar situation. I think particularly Anthony and Reinders, they were the cheap midfielders from maybe 4, 5, 6 game weeks ago to go for. Now they are just way, way out. Definitely not players to be going for anymore. And yeah, we should be kind of looking for replacements for those guys if we haven't done already. Now, we really need to think about getting rid of these players, I think, if you still have them. On to defenders. If you have Calafiori, I don't know why people are selling him. Maybe a couple of blanks in a row, maybe. Obviously, Chelsea is not a perfect fixture, but I think you do have to back Arsenal in any game week. And if you have an Arsenal defender in your team already, I think they're probably worth keeping for the long term and just leaving in your squad. Calafiori does have a little bit of attacking threat there as well. Maybe unfortunate not to get a goal in recent game weeks. And the fixtures coming up are better after Chelsea as well. Some small concerns about some rotation when the fixtures do get a little heavier, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. And Virgil is going to be next. Something that, again, there's a lot of storylines running at the moment, a lot of agendas, a lot of, I don't know, people, think certain things are true and other things aren't true. I'm going to put this one out here, guys. And, I know some people are not going to particularly like this, but hopefully you guys come to these videos because you want to get the information you might not necessarily get by just, maybe watching the games or looking at the results and things like that. Liverpool actually, over the past 6 game weeks, despite the goals they've conceded, which is 13, by the way, they've actually got some of the best, some of the lowest expected goals conceded in this period. So their expected goals conceded numbers, just 6.3. That puts them kind of on level with Man City, maybe Aston Villa, who have been an improved side. It's better than like Crystal Palace, or maybe similar to Crystal Palace. I think slightly better. So actually, Liverpool, they are not actually conceding that many high-quality chances. I think what we saw in the Nottingham Forest game, for example, is that Forest was super clinical in that game. Actually, even in game week 12 in isolation, yes, Liverpool conceded 3 goals, but in terms of expected goals conceded in game week 12, they're actually top half of the table for game week 12 in isolation. So actually, they're not conceding that many high-quality chances at the moment. So even though Liverpool are conceding goals, I don't think it's time to lose those Liverpool defenders yet, because there are promising signs. And I think with the arrival of Alisson, this this expected goals conceded versus actual goals conceded, the ratio on that should hopefully start to improve with a superior goalkeeper in goal. And coming up against West Ham, Sunderland, Leeds, teams that don't necessarily have the highest quality finishers in their sides, you would imagine that this sort of tries to kind of revert to the mean, kind of go back to what we expect, rather than being so far gone from the expected results from the actual results. So I think that it might start to close the gap a little bit, and that means that Liverpool are going to keep clean sheets. Of course, defensive contributions, Van Dijk is just a master at the moment, and even though typically Liverpool aren't getting too many chances from set pieces at the moment, this West Ham game is, this is the team that concedes loads of headed chances, loads of set pieces, and Virgil is just prime for that. So I'm sure there'll be some tactics on the training ground, seeing how they can exploit this weakness of West Ham, and maybe Virgil could get a goal. I think you would regret selling him if you did. Mark Gay here as well. No strong reason to sell him, really. The Man United fixture isn't ideal, but we've got Burnley and Fulham after that, which are a lot nicer. Monitor Senesi, Bournemouth have really, really looked pretty poor defensively, actually, in recent game weeks. So that is something to have some concern about. Defensive contributions are still typically there, though. And I think the next 2 fixtures are okay. They're not too bad for Bournemouth. We've got cash here as well. Definitely not worth a sell in front of this Wolves game, unless, you are desperate. Of course, cash not really offering too much in an attack. In attacking sense, maybe a tiny bit, but not really anything huge. But it's the good fixture. Aston Villa are an improving defence as well, which is nice to see. Van de Ven, actually, even though week to week he doesn't look great at the moment, Fulham at home is a good fixture if you're looking for a clean sheet. So even though Spurs not looking great, I think you maybe can consider keeping Van de Ven for this game week. Burn is going to be interesting to see how he fits into this Newcastle side now that Lewis Hall is back in the left-back position, but the fixtures coming up are not too bad. So maybe one to monitor there and consider selling if you do have a replacement in mind. As for those more confident sells, Pedro Porro, just not value for money right now. Reece James plays against Arsenal, and then I think with the midweek game against Leeds, I think he's probably going to be benched there. So we're looking at James playing against Arsenal and Bournemouth, some rotation risk, some minutes being managed there, and these are kind of the lower expectations for clean sheets anyway. So I would be probably looking to sell James, just not worth the hassle right now. And of course, Gabriel with his long-term injury is going to be a sell as well. But we should wait really until Wednesday to monitor his situation, whether he is going to be out for very long term or just long term, I guess. And by the way, guys, if you do enjoy the buy, sell, keep, avoid videos, make sure you do drop a like. It massively does help out. And feel free to hype the channel as well. Really helpful. That hype button, if you fancy clicking it, we could maybe help boost old FPL Mate up to the top. Cheers, guys. Looking at those forwards, Mr. Obvious, Thiago at home against Burnley looks really nice, particularly if you can cover him for game week 14 where he plays against Arsenal. Burnley at home is just a fantastic fixture, and even though Thiago has scored a lot of penalties, he is also getting open play chances. And finally, his XG numbers, I guess in part due to those penalties, have overtaken Mateta, meaning he is second now only to Erling Haaland when we're looking at that attacking data. So Thiago really rising up the ranks recently, and for his very cheap 6.5 million price tag, seems like pretty much a no-brainer for the output he is producing right now. Not just his actual output, but his kind of underlying numbers as well back it up. Really nice stuff there, so definitely worth buying this week. If you've got a Joao Pedro or maybe someone you're not so keen on in your squad, I would happily make that move to Thiago this week. We've got Mateta still here as a potential buy, and to be honest, guys, it's tricky coming up with buys in the forward position because outside of Haaland, Thiago, and maybe Mateta and Voltemada here, no one else is really convincing. No one else has really kind of put their head above the parapet and kind of presented themselves as pick me. So we've got no pick me boys in the FPL forward position right now. So really it is Thiago, Mateta, Voltemada, and of course Haaland as really the only obvious forwards right now. Everyone else maybe not super obvious. We could maybe put Welbeck in this category. I've put him as a monitor, and that is, if you don't already have him, I would be worried about rotation in upcoming game weeks. Ekitike, maybe a similar situation. He hasn't really been performing anyway, but you wonder what will happen between him and Isak. Could he be pretty good if he starts regularly? Maybe, but again, far from convinced. Wilson obviously scored a couple of goals in game week 12, so some people looking at him, but even then he's getting early substitutions every single game week. I think there still is some rotation risk there with Fulkrug coming back. It's just a risky pick generally. And Watkins, yes, he has the fixture. Wolves at home, brilliant fixture. But this is a guy who's scored 1 goal in 17 games in all competitions this season. No assists. Really not good enough. So are you going to spend 8.5 million on a man who he is just not performing at all? And people talk about Salah's been out of form, Saka's been out of form. Like, those players, you can maybe say they've been, not really producing huge amounts for their price tag, but they've been doing better than 1 goal in 17 games. So I do think we need to weigh that when considering Watkins against this Wolves side. Avoid Richarlison. There's still going to be some rotation risk there, I think, with him. Great goal against Arsenal, but the underlying numbers are not there at all. Just not feeling this one. Creeper Jr. also an avoid. Think there's too much rotation risk there. And Joao Pedro, you're not going to buy a Chelsea attacker or any kind of attacker really when they're about to face Arsenal. Okay, I have to be honest, guys. When it comes to midfielders this week, I really struggled. So if you think that the order of these players is maybe a little bit dodgy, I probably agree with you because I cannot settle on a good list for midfielders to buy this week, which maybe is a sign that maybe it's just not a week to make a midfield transfer. I know, crazy. But yeah, we'll go through what we've got anyway. I think Mbermo has been an informed player, yet to play as I record this video, but I think he'll probably do pretty well against Everton. Even though he does face Crystal Palace away, he has been in good form, massively overperforming his data, don't get me wrong, but in good form, and particularly from game week 14 has some good fixtures. So if you're desperate for a new midfielder, maybe just going 1 week early on Burmo, you could maybe wait until game week 14, but maybe you could go for him now. Minter has been in great form as well, but another player who has been massively overperforming his numbers. 5 assists from 0.8 to expected assists just doesn't seem sustainable to me, to be honest, but there you go. Still, he is taking shots, and he's a really good price at 6.1 million. And the next 3 fixtures, maybe even 4 if you include Liverpool, they're not really too bad. And Cody Gakpo, we mentioned earlier, his underlying numbers are really strong right now. If Florian Wirtz is out, then Gakpo is going to be nailed on the left wing. Even if Florian Wirtz is back, with Szoboszlai playing at right back, then maybe we could still see Gakpo getting a healthy amount of minutes. And if so, that's going to be great for this run of fixtures as long as he can produce on his numbers. 2 goals in 6 game weeks is not amazing, but it's not too bad, really, is it? It's not like he's completely flopping right now. Going into the monitor section, this is where I've got my Arsenal boys. Chelsea away is not the perfect jumping on point for these guys, but I think Rice in particular has been a very reliable FPL asset. He's doing really well for defensive contributions, 63 in the past 6 game weeks, taking shots, has that set piece share as well, creativity, lots to like. Eberechi has a huge overperformance against Spurs, but as an Arsenal fan, I didn't really mind. 3 goals from, what was it, 0.6 XG, something like that. So really, really impressive stuff. He is capable of doing that from time to time, and I think generally he is a decent FPL pick, but I don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves, expecting those hat-tricks every single week. And there is also the small concern, and I think Eze will play, by the way, just to make that very clear. He's done nothing wrong to deserve to be dropped. But Ødegaard is back. He is going to be available. And, that does mean there is going to be some competition in midfield. If some forwards are back as well, we might see Marino competing in midfield. We could see many other things. Arsenal have a deep squad. They are capable of rotating. Trossard seems to have got that left wing slot down locked as well. He's been playing really well. So where is Eze going to play? He's probably going to continue to play. But just do want to flag that as a consideration before buying Eze if you are thinking about him. Doku, a monitor. I think with the rotation risk, I'm a little bit worried about him, to be honest. So a little bit of concern there around him. I think that's just mainly because rotation risk, to be honest. And he doesn't really shoot that often. I want goals from my Doku, I think. So yeah, his numbers aren't phenomenal, but he looks good on the pitch. I don't know. Some people like him. I think I prefer Foden on a, if you're on a free hit, 1 week punt, I think I prefer Foden, but maybe Doku as well. Neither player I would want long term. Rodgers is another player I don't think I'd want long term. He is good for minutes. But for the Wolves fixture in isolation, I like it. It's pretty good. But again, I don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves on this one. 2 goals scored in game week 12. One was a good goal, fair play, tight angle, but he managed to score that first goal. Second goal, and this was against Leeds, by the way, game week 12. It was a free kick. He doesn't usually take free kicks. It's apparently the first time he's ever taken a free kick and, from a shooting position and shot. And I have no idea how that went in. It was straight down the middle of the goal. Goalkeeper didn't even dive. It was a perfect catching height. A really bizarre free kick goal. So I don't want to say Rodgers got lucky to get his haul in game week 12, but it was a little unexpected given the circumstances, and therefore I'm not totally convinced it's repeatable regularly. Now against Wolves, if you're a nailed on attacker, anything can happen. But after that, Rodgers is a player who will often go weeks without taking a single shot, or maybe if he does take a shot, it'll be from miles out, nowhere really, very dangerous. Doesn't really create too much. His underlying numbers are quite frankly awful over the last 6 game weeks. 0.67 xg, 0.31 xa. It's really weak. If it wasn't for this Wolves fixture, I wouldn't even be looking at him at all. I'd be saying he's a straight up avoid, but for 1 week punt, maybe. For avoids, I'm going to go Bruno G, and I do think I have been underrating him a little bit, but because Newcastle are so much better at home, I think it's maybe worth holding off on this move 1 more week. Any away fixture for Newcastle, I just don't fully trust them right now. So I think 1 more week without Bruno, and then we'll have another look at him because, he's been doing okay. He's certainly been picking up FPL points, maybe overperforming a little bit, but yeah, maybe avoid the away fixture. And once again, with Enzo and Neto, if a player's playing against Arsenal, is probably not the week to buy them. Looking through those defenders, I think Timber is still a great pick, even though the fixture against Chelsea is rough. We always back Arsenal to keep a clean sheet, and Timber's attacking threat is genuine for a defender at least. O'Reilly's is even better. He looks like a great pick from an attacking perspective here. City with some really nice fixtures in the next 3 as well, Leeds, Fulham and Sunderland. If O'Reilly plays regularly, and I think he looks like first choice right now in Premier League games, he's going to be even more of a first choice player when Aït-Nouri goes off to AFCON in a couple of weeks' time as well. So I think O'Reilly, yes, he's risky, but he might be worth taking that risk because he is definitely a high risk, high reward kind of player. So if you're feeling a little bit risky, maybe O'Reilly you could go for. Now, Munoz against Manchester United, typically it's not a great jumping on point for defenders against Manchester United, but because Munoz does have that attacking threat, I would be more willing to go for him this week. Do be aware that the goal he did score in Game Week 12 was not his classic open play attacking threat. It's kind of a bit of a scrappy I don't want to say tap in, but after a set piece, it was a bit of a scrappy goal and he would just happen to be on the end of it. So I don't know if that's necessarily repeatable, but you got to give him credit. He's a decent finisher. And even though that wasn't like that his typical open play attacking kind of goal, he does still have that open play attacking threat. And we see him very advanced in this Crystal Palace team typically. Maybe not as much this season as last season, but still. In the monitor section, we spoke about Virgil already, but again, would be strongly considering buying him for this week because I think there is so much in his favour. I won't go over it all again. Van den Berg has a lot to offer as well. His XG stats are actually really good. He's a genuine attacking threat. Burnley do concede a lot of chances from headers from those set pieces, and Brentford's underlying defensive numbers are actually not too bad either, even though they haven't really kept clean sheets. So for 4.5 million, a DEFCON defender with attacking threat, decent underlying numbers, and a nice fixture against Burnley. Rotation maybe for your squad. He's not rotation risk, 90-minute man, but you could rotate him in and out because of his cheap price tag. Could be worth going for. Saliba, I'm a little bit down on because the fixture is rough and he doesn't really offer DEFCON or attacking threat. Ruben is an interesting one. I'm going to put him in monitor. I think I prefer O'Reilly at the cheaper price tag, but Ruben seems much better for minutes and could keep regular clean sheets, or at least semi-regular clean sheets. Maybe not quite as much as the Arsenal defense. Avoid Murillo for now, but I think we should be keeping an eye on him. I think he could become a good pick. Very good for defensive contributions these days under Sean Dyche. And maybe some good fixtures coming up, maybe after the Brighton game. So one eye on Murillo, but maybe not this week. Would not be looking to buy Van den Ven, even if I would keep him. And again, Kukurea against Arsenal. We're not buying players against Arsenal right now. It's against the rules. Looking at the goalkeepers, Raya is a keep. Sanchez is a keep. Both have difficult fixtures this game week. If you're on a free hit, you probably remove them. But in general, you want these players for the long term. Still some good fixtures to come. Defense is looking pretty decent at the moment, certainly Arsenal, but Chelsea actually improving defensively, which is interesting to see. In terms of those sells, Pickford not really good value for money right now, and Mamardashvili back on the bench with Alisson returning. If you're looking for a new goalkeeper, Martinez at 5 million is looking really strong at the moment as a pick. Aston Villa improving, and 5 million a decent price tag, but Verbruggen 4.4 million could be the best price tag of them all. Over the last 6 game weeks, Brighton are actually second best for non-penalty expected goals against. So really improving there. And they've got some good fixtures coming up. So Verbruggen, 4.4 million, could be a nice cheap option. Sunderland, rough fixtures, dropping down the table in terms of their defence a little bit at the moment. And Henderson, I do like as a pick, but I think there's so much better value in the outfield Palace players that wasting a slot on a Crystal Palace goalkeeper, particularly ahead of the Manchester United game, is probably not the best of ideas. But those are all the players we want to talk about today, guys. If I missed anyone out, and I'm sure I did, please let me know in the comments section, and we will give that player a rating: buy, sell, keep, or avoid. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like. If you want to check out my first draft of my free hit team, I uploaded that yesterday, so feel free to go check that one out. Shout out to the members, of course, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.